I want to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. It's a foundation where 100% tuition goes to these kids to go to college, you know, full tuition, whatever. So I found this great foundation. I'm gonna raise money for it. So I said, you know what? I have to Google something that's evil, something very hard. I knew nothing about ultra marathons. I hadn't even run a marathon. I knew nothing about this world. So I Googled the top 10 hardest races in the world. And what comes up is a Badwater 135. It's a 135-mile race through Death Valley in the summertime. I thought it was a stage race. I thought it was a race where you run like 20 miles, set up camp, you know, barbecue outside, and then go run some more the next day. So I called the race director up at the race and said, hey, Chris, his name is Chris Kosman, I want to do your race. So we had a long conversation. You know, I was much heavier then, and I hadn't put running shoes on in over a year. I'm around between 240 to 270. I'm in that range. My weight has varied a lot through the SEAL teams and out of the SEAL teams, so I was a heavy guy. But the long and short of it all was, I hadn't put running shoes on in over a year. I was a big time power lifter. I lifted weights heavy, that's what I did. Right. I got back home from Iraq, went straight to free fall school, and then this happened. So I called Chris Kosman up on a Wednesday. He says, look, man, the only way you can qualify for my race is to run 100 miles at one time in 24 hours or less. There happened to be a race that Saturday, so 4 days later. And he said, if you qualify by running 100 miles or less in 24 hours, I will consider you my race. I'm gonna cut to the chase. I signed up for this race. It's called the San Diego One Day, where you run around a 1 mile track for 24 hours to see how many miles you can get. My goal was 100 miles. So I got to mile 70, and I cleared 70 miles in like 12, 13 hours pretty quickly. But I was done. My feet were broken. I was stress fractures, shin splints, muscles were tearing. I was in bad shape. I was eating Ritz crackers and drinking Mileplex. That's all I had. No water, didn't know what the hell I was doing out there. Had on some tube socks. It was just ridiculous. It was a clown show. So I sat down at mile 70, and at this time I was married. And I look at my wife and I was like, I'm messed up bad. So I literally start to turn white. Here I am, I'm at mile 70, I think I got 30 miles to go, I'm jacked up. I gotta go to the bathroom, and the bathroom's like 20 feet from me, it's a porta potty. I can't get out of the chair. So I'm peeing blood down my leg, and I got 30 miles to go. And I can't stand up because my blood pressure's all messed up. I've been in 3 hell weeks, Ranger School, overcome so many obstacles in my life. This last 30 miles of this race is when I realized a human being is not so human anymore. We have the ability to go in such a space if you're willing to suffer, and I mean suffer. Your brain and your body, once connected together, can do anything. And this 30 miles was the life-changing moment. I was out of it. I was in the worst pain in my entire life. I was, to me, on the brink of death. And I was able to chunk this 30 damn miles into small pieces. I was so driven, and I'm not gonna say motivated, because motivation's crap. Motivation comes and goes. When you're driven, whatever's in front of you will get destroyed. So I sat in this chair, and I was so driven to succeed in this race. And at this time, everybody goes, were you thinking about the guys that died? And I'm not gonna lie to you, I wasn't. This became a personal thing. This became me against this race, me against the kids that called me against me. It just became something that I took so violently personal. And I broke this thing down into small pieces. I said, okay, I gotta get nutrition. I gotta be able to stand up before I can get off this curb and get off this chair and be able to go 30 miles. So I went through all these small steps, and I was able to stand up. And then from standing up, I was literally walking around with my wife at the time, and she goes, you're not gonna make the time. She goes, you're walking like 30-some minute miles. I got to mile 81, and the second she said that I'm not gonna make the time, I ran the last 19 miles, nonstop. So this was years ago. I had literally the size of $50. I had to get compression tape, and I taped up my ankles and I taped up my feet, and that's how I got through that race. My shins hurt so bad from having stress fractures that the only way I could continue on was I taped it so I wasn't doing the flexor motion that activates your shins. So I taped my ankles and my shins up, and I got that from because in my third hell week, they weren't gonna let me go back through training anymore. So I literally went through all of BUD/S, my last SEAL training, with stress fractures and shin splints. And how I did it was I would tape my ankles all the way up to my calf every morning. So for the first hour, the pain was excruciating. But what would happen is my feet would go numb. And I did that every single day for 6 months. That's how I got through my third hell week, because I was so broken from the first two that the commander said, hey, the CEO said this is your last time we're sending you through. So that's how I got the idea to do that. And people may listen to this and say, this guy is sadistic, he's crazy, No, if you know how I came up, you realize I was just a scared kid that found drive and passion to be something much better than what he thought he was. That's all it is. Cookie jar is something that I've made up of all the failures of my life, all the things that I failed and I went back. I failed and I went back and I finally succeeded. All the things that kicked my ass, I put them all in the cookie jar, because at times of hell, even the hardest men, in times of suffering, what we do is we forget how hard we really are. Because that's what suffering is. Suffering is a test. That's all it is. Suffering is the true test of life. And so that cookie jar travels in my brain. So whenever I get put in a situation where I have poopy pants, the woe is me mentality of, oh my God, life sucks, I take a second, I take the 1 second decision. I step out of my life for 1 second, go in the cookie jar, pull up, oh, you were in 3 hell weeks and finished 2. One of those hell weeks, a guy died because it was so bad. Oh, you are a badass. You are. I put it back in the cookie jar, and I remember who I really am. I'm not the kid that was called, I'm not the scared kid. This is who I am. It's a reminder of who you truly are at the core of yourself. But what I was saying to myself the whole time on that track, and this is what I say to myself, self-talk and visualization are the 2 keys to my success. I believed for that last 19 miles, I was indestructible. Because I took myself in that chair, crapping up my back, peeing blood down my leg, shin splints, stress fractures. I use all that for motivation versus negativity. I use it for motivation. I said to myself, who on this earth would still be going right now? You are. You are. You gotta be the hardest on the planet. Is it true? I don't give a f. At that time, it got me to the finish line of that race. I believed it. I believe it today. I believed it enough to where my body said, he's not gonna stop. I took all the negative things. I need to go to the hospital, this and that. Who the hell could even get out of that chair? You did. Who the hell would even think about taping stress fractures up? You did. All those things I used for motivation. And in Hell Week, what they do in Hell Week, because this is where I really went to the dark side. What they do in Hell Week is they design Hell Week to find your flaws. And they do a really good job of that. It's 130 hours of continuous training. You may get 2 hours of sleep. And they beat the shit out of you and find everything wrong with your mentality. And then they start Hell Week. And that's the beauty of it. And for me, I'm not some naturally God-given guy. I don't have a great bit of talent in anything. So what got me through horrible times was the dark side. My name is David Goggins. I created Goggins. Goggins is the guy that can take anything you put in front of him. You want to break my legs? So be it. I have a way of going to a place like I did in that race where all the pain and suffering that they put on top of me in Hell Week, I will reverse that pain and suffering and I will take your soul. So every instructor that put me through buds. My job, what drove me, was I wanted you to go home that night after you beat the living shit out of me, and I smiled in your face. I wanted you to feel worse than I did, and you were going home to a nice warm bed with your wife or your kids and a nice meal, and I was still out there in the grip, suffering for another 100 hours. I wanted you to think about me, knowing that I'm comfortable being very uncomfortable. And I want you to think about when you went through Hell Week, how uncomfortable you were and how bad you wanted to quit, knowing I'm not thinking that way. So the dark side is something that I've designed. It's an evil place I can go that very few things can hurt me. I use the hurt you're trying to put on me, I flip it upside down and use it. You trying to use it for kryptonite? No, it's power pillars for me. I'm using it for strength. I just flip negative into positive, that's all it is.